All right, how we doing today, guys? Tonight we're going to cover chapter 3, the counseling process, and chapter 5 that talks about psychoanalytical counseling, kind of the building block, the starting point, the foundation for all other modern therapies. So, um, when it comes to this recording, it's going to be a little bit shorter than our normal classroom time. Because there will be time for you to go in and try some things, practice some things. Let me adjust this camera. The expectation is that when there's something to do, you're pausing the video, you're doing it, then you come back to the video. So that's why it's a little bit shorter. Um, so for the setup, I'm at my work. You can see my office. That's my wall of fame back there, some fun photos. But I have my webcam. I have monitor down here at my lesson plan. I have a monitor up here that has Canva going. So you'll see my eyes go from here to here to here and all that fun stuff. So just a heads up with that. But yeah, let's get into it. So chapter 3, we are talking about the counseling process, but like what even is the counseling process, right? Like even when we're looking here at Travolta, he has no idea. What is it? What do we do? Um, I think of the school setting as funny. My buddy, who's now a dean, or no, excuse me, he was a dean, and then now he's an associate principal of student services. He had a line that really stuck out to me. He was like, it took me becoming a dean to really realize what counselors do. Because I know, at least in the school setting, there's this misconception that counselors, all we do is make schedules, write letters of rec, and the rest of the time we're kind of partying down here, right? People forget about the social emotional aspect. I'm sure there are plenty of misconceptions with clinical mental health counselors as well. But it's a journey, right? It's a learning journey. It's a journey to kind of learn about what's going on with people, why people are, where they're at, how do we get them to where they want to be. Yeah, and when it comes to theories, I think I talked about this a little bit in class, but when it comes to theories are kind of a way to organize or understand patterns, right? The way I like to think about theories is theories are, it's a way, for the most part, to kind of get to the same conclusion. It's a safety net. I'm stuck, and how do I get from A to B? Like it says on the bottom, the eclectic counselor. We've talked about that enough, where it's being able to pull from a multitude of theories or approaches. But when it comes to a theory, it's kind of like, are you Google Maps or are you Apple Maps or are you Waze, right? Like we're all getting to the same spot. It's just how do we get there? And that's where, the eclectic is a good counselor. Maybe good's too black and white of a term. Um, I'd say good, but I'd also make sure to put in their experienced counselor is someone that can, adjust to their client. Like I think I said it a couple times in class. One thing I talk about in the MI class I'm teaching is, for a goal to be a goal, both people got to be on board. And so it's, for those of you that are teachers, for those of you that have worked with kids, for those of you that maybe are in the business world and have different clients, you know that how you approach one person isn't how you approach another person. Um, if you think of any, those of you that still have mom and dad around or grew up with a mom and dad, maybe you got to talk differently to each of them, or different friends or things like that. So same thing goes with counseling, because it's, the key word in counseling is a therapeutic relationship. So how do you adjust to that, right? How do you meet your client or your student where they need you to meet them? So how can counseling work? Well, counselor's personal quality matters more than the theory, right? So again, big letters up there, huge letters, demonstrate empathy. Um, these are the top qualities of an effective counselor, according to data, according to feedback from clients. They are real warm and show empathy. They have hope and optimism, and they are great at active listening, right? So when it comes to a good counselor or how to make counseling work, I like that one that's right under the title up there. Personal qualities are greater than the theory. The theory, like I said, it's you could be a terrible driver and Google Maps will take you where you want to go, right? You could be a great driver and not use Google Maps or anything, and you don't get to your destination. It's kind of a combination of both, right? The relation, if you look in our text, page 67, page 70, the relationship you build with the client is the single best predictor of success. You could see that quote that's kind of jiggling around over there. The counseling relationship is the best predictor of counseling outcome and is critical to its success and effectiveness. Right? A lot of times when clients come in to see us, it's that there's change, and what contributes to change. In our text, it kind of breaks it down. It is, 40% the client. They're doing the heavy lifting. That's, they're the ones that have to change, and we're trying to elicit it out of them. Their own strengths and motivation and knowing their support system is what's going to lead the most of the change. Second most is the relationship. What's your connection like with them? Do they feel comfortable coming to you? How do they feel coming to you? Right now, obviously, we have those examples of mandated sessions or, in the school setting, it's everyone has a counselor, so maybe kids take it for granted, but, they're in there. So how is the relationship? How are you connecting with them? 15% of it is hope. They have to believe things can change. They have to believe the reason they're in there, like it can be addressed, it can be worked on. And then lastly, the techniques, right? Specific strategies and activities you use. And that kind of comes back to that eclectic counseling especially when you're working with kids, like you read the room, you read the kid or the student or the client, whatever word you want to use there. You're going to know what works best, right? It's similar. I kind of equate it to learning styles and teachers adapting to that. So, do you have like we'll speak in a little bit of absolutes here, but do you have a class where all of them are more kinesthetic learners? Okay, so even if you're teaching math or spelling tests or something like that, like you're going to have some sort of movement, something with their body where they're doing something, right? Do you think about yourself? Are you someone when you learn, like for me, if I'm reading and I have music playing, the music can't have any words. Then I start listening to the words. If I know the words, I start singing them. And my reading comprehension's never been the greatest, and it just goes. So that's a technique for me. If I'm going to read, I need to have music, but it's usually like chill lo-fi music where it's just, calm beats, something maybe you would hear like, at a beach resort or something where it's just noise, but it's like soothing noise. So the strategies and the activities you use with your client do play a role into it. And then how do things change? Right? Reichman and Siegelman, they stated that all successful treatments have the following ingredients: collaboration, trust, and mutual commitment to the counseling. So basically, just that I'd say that first one is just respect, right? Safe and supportive, right? No malfeasance. Goals and directions. Where are you going? Right? Where are you going with this thing? Where are we taking it? Shared understanding of the concerns that will be addressed. So just understanding why we're there and learning, especially with children, right? They're still developing. They need to learn things. Especially, we talked about those, the egocentrism, like, are they learning the whole world isn't about them? Um, as we talked about maturing, the different stages. I'm having a brain fart, who that was. But talking about, this versus that, and the development and understanding that there isn't just one way to think about things. There isn't just one way to approach things. Encouragement, right? This is where you're pointing out things, like you're noticing change. I like that ability to name and express appropriately and change their emotions. This is big. Like when you can, I think about with my grief group, we just did an activity talking about the feelings wheel. Y'all have probably seen it on the sticker on my laptop. Basically, there's a Native American proverb that says this in a more eloquent way than I'm going to say it, but basically, if you could name it, you could tame it, right? Like if a kid can name an emotion, or even ourselves, think about them with those days when you're like, I just, I just feel so. And when you're just that's what you're calling it because you can't give it a name, like it takes control over you. And gauge their reactions as well as acquire new, more effective behaviors, right? And this is big. This is maybe learning, am I in the wrong? Am I doing something wrong? Is there something I can change? So if we look at different change factors, we have cognitive, right? Universalization, insight, modeling, affective, acceptance, altruism, transference. Transference is interesting. Transference is really interesting when you see a young kid do it. It's pretty interesting. That's all I can say. Um, and then behavioral, reality test, ventilation, interactions with us. So we got our theories, and a little bit of foreshadowing. Uh, they're like maps, right? We're all going to the same place. So like on this one, we're going to National Lewis, but if we look at on the right, how are we getting there? Am I avoiding highways or am I going on highways? Am I avoiding ferries, going on ferries? Do I want a fuel effective route or not? So, we're all getting to the same destination, but the beauty of counseling is that there are so many different ways to get there, right? There are so many different ways to get to the same destination, and that's what makes it fun, to be honest. That's what makes it the best profession in the world. Have someone argue me. I know you guys won't. So we have our different theories, right? Theories kind of fall into three categories. There's feelings, that's more like person-centered gestalt, behaviors, reality or brief counseling, and thinking or thoughts, that's REBT and cognitive behavior. And then the big picture is working with families or group. Changing one of these areas usually help the other change too. So if you have a theory that is more grounded in feelings, behaviors, or thoughts, chances are it's going to have that impact in a different area. So we look at this quote here. Our intention is not to isolate feeling, thinking, behaving, or systems. Failure to integrate feelings, thoughts, and behaviors is a symptom of schizophrenia, a diagnosis that describes a loss of contact with the environment, a split from reality, and a disintegration of personality. Rather, we attempt to describe how effective intervention in one of the three areas helps the individual maximize the other two areas into a more fully functioning lifestyle. Right? This makes me think about, and I think I brought it up last time. Again, not making you drink the MI Kool-Aid, but with MI, there's this activity called, oh my gosh, why am I having a brain fart on it? It's agenda mapping. Sorry. Oof. And you kind of write some things you want to work on. And it was, I had my class do it, and it was interesting because you might pick one thing to focus on, but it actually focusing on one and something you could do to improve it kind of has a shrapnel effect where it bleeds into one of the other things you said you wanted to work on. And same thing here. You work on feelings, and inadvertently is always going to also going to address thinking and behavior and so on. So, what are some issues with counseling children? First off, it's just kind of remembering what their levels are, right? I'll say it over and over again, but one thing we talked about was kids are not just mini adults. They are their own subgroup. They are their own culture. They are their own community. And so understanding that their cognitive and emotional development is different, right? And we talked about last week how the social emotional network forms faster than the cognitive network. So what's that mean? It means probably a lot of their choices are probably going to be based on emotional responses. Realizing children do not have a clear idea about time, amount, and frequency, right? That's that concrete thinking. They don't have it yet, depending on how young you're working with. Knowing that memories and expectations of the child may be distorted. I think about my youngest Bella. She's hilarious. She'll say to us sometimes, "Hey, Daddy, do you remember when I used to be older than Ava?" I'm like, "That never happened. It's not how things work, babe." She's like, "Yeah, huh?" All right. Presenting information in a way that matches should say their understanding. Another typo. Um, but yeah, that's interesting. Like I feel like that is not just with kids, that's with anyone, right? The expression I like to use is don't use $5 words when $2 words will do. You don't want to talk over people, you don't want to talk down to people, you don't want to talk above people, you want to talk with people. Remember, the key word is this is a therapeutic relationship. Concrete examples, right? Things that kids can, hands-on activities, kids that they can see, they can actually touch, they can actually put a name to. And I like that bottom one, acknowledging the reality that children often lack control over many aspects of their existence. Um, if you read the book, Motivation Interviewing for School Counselors, Reagan has this quote that I use in just about all my presentations, where he talks about like basically kids are talked at all day. I'm using a school example, but this could apply to any kids. Take a second next family party you're at and just observe the kids and look at, yeah, they're playing and do whatever, but just think about how much, not all the time, right? I don't like to paint absolutes, but maybe think of the percentage of times they're being talked at instead of talked to. They're being told what to do. Having these rules enforced in them. And so the counseling relationship, that's a great opportunity to give them some power, to give them a voice, to show them you value what they bring to the relationship. Look at the top. Think of examples why these aren't addressed and how they can have a negative impact. We kind of talked through that a little bit, but you know, think about different examples. Think about different things you see with it, or when you see these come up, and just can you see kids when these come up or aren't addressed, I should say. Well, it depends on the one. Like, yeah. Anyways, do they start cocooning in? Do they start shutting down? I said to one of the classes, if I didn't say it in your class, I said in the other class. I think about a lot of times when I first meet my kids or my students or my clients, whatever word you want to use, I'm already at an uphill battle because I'm an adult in a school with an office. I'm also big. I'm 6'4". And so that in its own is probably a little like, oh, geez. It's funny because when I've only seen people on Zoom and they see me in person, they're like, ooh, you're huge. I'm like, I'm big. I'm not that big. But anyways, adult in a school with an office, up until this point, chances are, unless they've seen like a speech pathologist or a social worker, or if they're fortunate to go to an elementary, have gone to an elementary school that or middle school that have a counselor, if they've gone to someone's office, it's probably a principal or excuse me, or an assistant principal, and it's probably for being reprimanded for something they did wrong. So, I need to acknowledge that. I need to understand what they're what they're already coming in with and just kind of be sensitive to it. We got our first think, pair, share. Now, obviously, we can't pair and share, but I want you to take a minute and think back to a time you felt nervous or unsure about a new experience. A couple examples: starting a new class, starting a new job, meeting a new person, going on a first date, something that's new. And then just to yourself, think about what made you uncomfortable with this. Think about, okay, this was uncomfortable, but why was it uncomfortable? And then think about how this could how this could related, again, typo, how this could relate to feelings a child, adolescent, teenager might have when they first come into your office. So think about a time you felt nervous, think about what made you uncomfortable with it, and relate it to a kid. So pause this video, take about 5, 10 minutes or so to try this, okay? And pause. And we're back. So hopefully you paused. Don't cheat. Just don't cheat. Come on. God. If you didn't pause, go back and pause again. Thank you. All right. So just think about how, especially if you thought about an example from teenage years, or even adult years, even something, maybe it was a couple weeks ago when you started this class, like those uneasy feelings you had. And, you know, we're in our 20s, 30s. Some of us might be in our 40s, 50s. We're supposed to already be okay with this stuff. And we were like, ooh, I don't know. Now imagine a kid. So again, anytime you could try to, that's a great example of empathy. Like I'm not going through what you're going through, but through my experience, I could kind of understand how tough it might be. Excuse me. All right. So, key skills for working with kids. Number one, active listening. Show you're paying attention. That's probably the most important. That's the starting block, right? That is showing you're paying attention with your body and your words. Excuse me. I'm gonna get a water, but you can still hear me. I had to record a couple counseling sessions for my doc program, and for one of them, or for both of them, it was this kid I had a really good relationship with. Like he opened up to me about everything, right? Like, I mean, unfortunately, he did he did have a couple suicidal ideations, right? But what I really appreciated was, and maybe I could be a little cocky or maybe be a little proud of myself, was that I established a therapeutic relationship with him where he would feel comfortable telling me these things. And I was really proud of that. Um, but so this was back when I told you guys, cheers, LaCroix, baby. When I was doing my doc program, I was growing up my hair, so I had a pretty solid man bun. I was doing it in this office. I know you can't see much from the camera, but this is my desk. I've moved things a little bit, but I used to have a smaller couch over there. And with me, I don't like having barriers between me and people when I talk. So that's why my desk is pressed up against the wall so that when I turn, just open. And I had my phone set up there and I was recording it. And I noticed I have kind of a monofixation where my hands are always moving, always got something going, right? Like at home for my classes, I actually have an old arcade button that sometimes I'll click. I have paper clips and they're just gone to crap because I just bend them all the time. Or so I noticed that as he was talking with me, I had an open chest, nothing was blocking me, but I'm sitting like this sometimes a lot, just playing with my man bun, right? If you guys remind me next time in class, I could see if I could pull up the video and you could just see like I felt like I was being real empathic, but just me, I couldn't take my eyes off myself. And maybe that's egocentric, thinking the invisible audience, everyone's looking at me. But like really, it was distracting to me. So I could only imagine for a student, like, is this guy even paying attention? Is he trying to do his hair? Does he have a date tonight? Like what's going on there? So again, active listening is showing you're paying attention, not just with your words, but also physically. How are you showing you are interested? Right? Like sometimes I yawn a lot if I'm tired, if I haven't gotten a good night's sleep, but I am very quick to say, "Hmm, you're not boring me. Sorry, it's just I didn't get a lot of sleep. I'm here." Minimal encouragement. Not everything has to be a deep feedback statement, right? Not everything has to dig into a theory. Sometimes just a mm-hmm or yeah, uh, just knowing, just again knowing, yep, I hear you. Let's keep it going. Saying it back, paraphrasing or summarizing. This is huge. This is the easiest way to let a kid know that they're paying attention. And maybe every once in a while, when you feel more comfortable, you do complex, reflections or summarizations. You throw in emotions they might be feeling. You shoot your shot, and if you're wrong, that's always okay because that could get the kid to kind of share more. Clarifying. Hey, can you give me some more details on that? You mentioned so and so, but tell me a little bit more. Tracking. Is the student playing while they're talking to you? Are they doing something physically? What's going on with them? And then reframing, taking the situation and putting a positive spin. For some of us, we might automatically think of solution focused counseling, right? Again, the example I always give on, where you're at on a scale of 1 to 10. You're not a one, you're not a zero, you're a two. How come? But kind of going back to that, how you set up your office too can play a role in key skills for working with children, right? Like if you come in my office, again, I'm not saying my office is the greatest, but you can walk in my office and you know what you're going to get, right? They know it's a chill environment, they know it's relaxed. But even, not every office is like mine. Some offices don't have couches, they just have chairs, but it is creating a welcoming environment. It's creating a situation where I feel comfortable being in here, whatever comfortable is like. Now, I also know, like this wall behind me, my students maybe that are on the spectrum or have ADHD, my office could be very distracting. It could be tough to focus. So maybe I sit a little closer to them. Maybe we go somewhere else, right? It's kind of meeting the student where they're at or the client. Did anyone catch the Easter egg in this slide? I'll give you a second to see if you can figure it out. The office in the bottom right is Michael Scott's office from The Office. Told you guys I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd. So, what is the counseling model, right? The general counseling model, again, not necessarily applied to a theory, right? This is just kind of like generally what is counseling? All counseling it's simple, but it just follows 6 steps. Number one, figure out the problem by listening. Think about those times maybe you've talked to a friend or a colleague or a family member, it doesn't have to be a kid, but where you can tell, like, okay, I'm listening and I'm hearing what they're saying, and I already know, like, what they're saying they're here for is not what's really going on, what's really kind of tugging at them. Clarify the child's expectations. Again, give the kid a voice. Like, hey, what do you expect from counseling? What do you know, you can even, soften it. Hey, I know mom and dad are making you come to this. Like, since you're here already, how can I make this best for you? What are you hoping you get out of this? What do you want out of it? Exploring what has been done to solve the problem. What have you already tried? Tell me all the things you've given a shot at, right? And I think with that too, it's also good to highlight why, maybe some of these were a good choice or step in the right direction or, whatever you got to do. You never want to judge me like, why'd you do that? Ooh, ooh. Step four, explore new ways things could be done to solve the problem. Now, again, depending on how old they are, depending on what stage they're at, this can be challenging. This can be that concrete, there's only one way to do things. I have to do them. I think about, if I am operating from a solution focused lens with my students, if they come in, it's like, well, why'd you come down to see me? Well, you sent me a pass, so I had to come. I go, you didn't have to come. You could have said you were coming here and went somewhere else. Why'd you come to school? Because I have to. I go, you don't have to come to school. They're like, yeah, I do, or my mom will yell at me. And I go, wait a minute. I didn't say there wouldn't be consequences, but no one, you can leave whenever you want, right? And so once I talk about that, like, hey, you have a choice. You can try things different. Like a lot of times I'll tell students if we're working on homework, right? Again, I work in a school. I might say something like, let's brainstorm ideas, but I'm also a realist with them. Like, I'm like, all right, now I know I'm supposed to tell you to use your assignment notebook, but are you gonna use it? They're like, no. I go, all right, then let's skip it. Let's find something else. Because if I'm giving you a new task to keep track of your tasks, but now you got to remember that new task for your other task, and if you forget that one task, like, ugh, drives me nuts. So like we'll find something like, hey, like I had one student who was back before when X was Twitter, they would check their Twitter every day, all the time. So I said, all right, so here's what do you check? He's like, I'll check my DM, see if my friend sent me any messages. I go, you're pretty consistent with that? Yeah. I said, can I propose an idea I think might work? Do I have permission to do that? They're like, yeah. I go, what if maybe you created another Twitter account and I tried to be cool and I was like, you slid in your DMs. Sounded like such a douche. Um, with your homework assignments that you saw it there. Another kid used an email account to email his trainer for baseball. So well, what if you emailed that account your homework? And why am I saying this? I'm saying this because I also tell them, I go, listen, you're going to try some of these and they're going to fail miserably. And that's a good thing. They look at me and they're like, wow, that brain injury was really worse than we thought it was, wasn't it? And I go, stop. No, I'm like, because it's showing you things don't have to be done the same way. You can do things a different way. It's just this way didn't work. This time you threw the pasta at the wall and it didn't stick. But there's other ideas, there's other pasta to throw. So brainstorming those new ideas of, what else can be done. And then once you do that, get them to try one of the new ideas, like I talked about. Like, hey, do you think this could work? Like, don't lie to me. I don't want you to lie to me because this isn't me. This is for you. If you don't think realistically you could do this or you're going to follow through, then let's skip it. Let's find another thing to try. And then wrapping up the session, like, all right, let's summarize what we did here. Let's talk about what we did here. Let's talk about your plan. How is that going to look? How are we going to know by next session, you know, if it's not going to be 100% successful? It's not going to be we do this one thing and we found the magic cure, I don't want to say cure because nothing's wrong with them, but like, we found the golden ticket. But how is there a way we're going to be able to tell this is a step in the right direction? So just think about that. And think about a situation you've had with a kid and walk through that, which is what you would do now. So you're going to pause this We got practice. Practice, not a game. I want you to look at table 3.1 in our text. And obviously not with a partner, but by yourself. Act out a counseling scenario using some of these activities or some of these steps from the general counseling model. You know what you can even do if you want to do? Um, Upload, take a screenshot of this, upload it into Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude or whatever you use, um, Perplexity, and say, create a scenario where you are a child, age whatever, dealing with whatever, and I am going to try to walk through these 6 steps. My role is a community mental health counselor, school counselor. You are this age. Give me feedback. That'd be great to do with this. I know, like for example, I created this MI bot that I share with my class, but I also share at my trainings where people go in and they say what level of MI they're at, what their role is, and they actually practice having a session based in motivational interviewing. So try it with MI. It's pretty cool. So take about 10 minutes or so and then come back afterwards. So we will pause. And we're back. How'd it go? Were some of the stages easier for you than others? Were some of them more challenging? Obviously, none of you were the student in these scenarios, but imagine you were the student or the child client. How do you think it felt at each of these stages? Was there anything you did that you think might have been what I like to call the aha moment, where there's a breakthrough, or where you really evoke that change talk out of a student, like, or a kid, student or client, excuse me, like that. Oh, I get it now. Note taking. Note taking. What are our thoughts on this? I feel like, depending on who you ask, everyone has a different take on this. What are the rules? What are the considerations? Are there different notes for different counseling? I can tell you yes, right? Like I remember I co-taught a class. I forgot what class it was. I apologize, but I was co-teaching it, and we went over SOAP notes and things like that. And it was cool because they had me and Dr. Britton teach it, who's no longer with National Louis. But it was cool because she would give the clinical mental health side, I would give the school counseling side. So, like for example, when you're in a school, like you're going to have your student management system. For my district, we use Infinite Campus. Chances are, if you are a school counselor in the state of Illinois, there's a very good chance you're either going to use Infinite Campus or Power School. And in there, there's a section for notes. When I meet with a student, I put just the notes to kind of remind me. It's a track that I talked with them, what we talked about, but I'm very vague. Um, our district is nice. They have it set up to where if we select counseling notes, only like people in student services can see those notes. Teachers can't see them, but if we put it in as like attendance or RTI, they're open to the whole school. So there is that protection. But either way, I'm usually somewhat vague with them. Just, the bullet points to where like if I go in there or a social worker I'm working with that's working with the student on the same concern or psych, excuse me, they could be like, oh yeah. Now for those of you clinical mental health, right? Like it's gonna depend on the insurance company, to be honest. Like I was talking with my therapist and she goes over how like she gets a little frustrated with Blue Cross Blue Shield because she has to she has to phrase things a certain way, which like if they were just in her general notes, she'd be like, this isn't true. Not that she's lying, but just maybe having to make things, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but she has to paint a certain picture that is similar to what's going on with her clients. But, you know, with y'all, when it comes to private practice, like yeah, that's what your pay comes from is mostly insurance. So you are going to take different types of notes. As far as taking, I'm different than some people. I think it's okay to take notes. Um, I'm the type of person where if I don't take a note right away, like I might forget it. I think I told you guys I used to try to be all digital where I had these this Google Doc with a tab for each student and it was great, but like I also noticed, I don't want to talk to a kid here and then be typing. And I also noticed like if I'm taking notes like that in an IEP meeting or something, it is super easy to then go check my email and go down a rabbit hole. So I have my e-ink tablet that I could take notes on that I use now because it still backs it up if I need them. But I mean, for me, I tell my students, I go, hey, just so you know, you're going to see me jot things down while we're talking. It's just a memory for me. If you want to see what I'm writing, I'll gladly show you. But these are just so that next time we meet, I don't have to make you repeat yourself. I know what we discussed. I know what I need to do. I know what you're working on, things like that. So I tell students too, like, listen, and for some of you be clients, if you're not, and this would be the considerations, if you're not comfortable with me writing stuff down while we're talking, then I won't. That's okay. Again, showing that respect, making sure they have a voice. So note taking, it's depends on who you talk to, but again, those of you that are in the school setting, everything's protected. Um, Once you share it with somebody, then it becomes educational record. Um, Also in schools, be careful what you email, because identifiable information can be FOIA'd. Some of our teachers think they're protecting confidentiality when they will email me, but they will put a student's initials and their ID number, but they don't realize that that's the only student that has those initials and that ID number. So that could be FOIA'd. Um, if a student has a unique first name that no one else in the school has, that could be FOIA'd. But my philosophy is that when you're emailing about someone, use the three P's. Even those you're not in school, think about, back in the day, principal, parents, and your priest. Any of them read that email, would you be okay with that? Well, it's kind of a rule of thumb. All right, so what do we got now? Confidentiality. Maybe. Oh, wow. There we go. Confidentiality. So, what are the rules and the laws? It depends, right? It depends where you're at. Illinois, we're pretty lucky. Big three, right? Different states. When we were looking at the consent rights, the only and obviously that was a little dated, right? Like in my night class, someone looked up that actually for abortions in Illinois, I think it said on the on our presentation that parents need to be informed. They don't necessarily need to give permission. Uh, but now it's neither. So yeah, some of those are out of date, but I think that the big takeaway was there was only one topic, right? Sexually transmitted infection education and treatment that was in all 50 states and five territories. I'm sorry, no, that didn't have territories. All 50 states and DC. None of the other ones had a full, 50 plus DC. So where you go depends on it. And how do you present it to a child and a parent? I'd say it's tougher to present it to a parent and a guardian than a child, right? As I mentioned in the other class, I try to avoid being too formal when I say it to kids because, again, don't use $5 words when $2 words will do. Um, hey, I care about you, so if I'm concerned about your safety or someone else's safety, I got to break confidentiality. Or I call it the big three: hurt yourself, someone else, someone trying to hurt you. With parents, I tell them, listen, I'm going to encourage your student to share things with you. But when it comes to confidentiality, unless they say they're going to hurt themselves, someone else, someone's trying to hurt them, or their academics, because we are a school and you have a right to know their grades and how they're performing, like I need their permission to share things with you. And I don't want you to think it's me against you or us against you, or I'm trying to be your kid's best friend and get them to like me more than you. It's I want them to know they have a safe place where they can share things, but the big things that I will share it with you. And I also want to get, I'm also, and I make sure to tell them, I'm also going to encourage them to talk with you and to share these things with that we talk about with you. But in regards to me telling you, like, we are protected by confidentiality. Does counseling work? Is counseling working? Oh. Keyword, right? The phrase that pays together. Work with the kid to create measurable goals. A lot in the school world, we call those SMART goals, right? The M in SMART stands for measurable. Now, it doesn't always have to, it could be, when we think of studies with things or collecting data, a lot of times we think of quantitative and qualitative. We think quantitative is numbers, qualitative isn't, and it's not that black and white, right? Like if you want to base it on qualitative, like on feelings and emotions, you just have a code book and you assign numbers and like how often they're, it could be how often they're talking, about good feelings if they're struggling with something, how often they're, talking about their social life, their friends, how often they are um saying school's going well, things like that. Now, I'll be completely 100 with you. For me, it's tough to wrap my brain around that. I did take a class on it, but I didn't like it. So that is part of the reason why when I wanted to do a study for motivational interviewing in schools, because there's not a lot out there. But I wanted something that was hard numbers. So that's why I did academic performance, right? Because, I knew my blind spot. My blind spot was when it comes to qualitative, I don't feel comfortable doing that. So, or track on a simple task, a simple scale, like a Likert scale. I think about it the elementary school when I used to be an elementary school PE teacher. For 1 year, I think I had red, green, and yellow handprints on my wall. I'd say, all right, as you come in, tell me how you're doing today. And if a kid if a kid did yellow or red, maybe sometimes during class I'd, be like, hey, so you're doing red. Like, what's going on? Last week you were green. And just seeing if there's anything I can do to get them back to the green. And similar with the Likert scale, like, how are things going? Are things getting better? Excuse me. What are some common questions? How much should I share about myself? That's a tricky one, right? The focus should always be on the client, and you can share a little bit, but like be careful. I'm not going to use names, but there was a counselor here where they were working with a student, and I knew the student because I had coached their sister in basketball, and they asked for a counselor change because they felt like the counselor always made the sessions about their family. And when the student would present something, they felt like it always got circled back to her. So you can share. Um, I always ask permission, even with kids. But like also, the big answer is why. Like, hey, I want to share this personal story or this story about myself, but why am I doing it? What's the rationale behind it? What's it contributing to the therapeutic relationship? What if no one is talking? Hey, it's great. That's fine. Silence, especially with kids, it gives them time to think. You don't always, you got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable with silence. I think when my first master's was in curriculum and instruction, and I did a study, not a study, I did a study's a little too intense, but like for an assignment, I watched a second grade teacher or first grade teacher, excuse me. And so I would ask her like, hey, when you ask your students a question, can you kind of maybe do a variety of different wait time between when you provide the answer and the student and you wait to see like how quickly you are to answer it. Like, can you maybe vary it? Like maybe right away sometimes, maybe your normal amount, maybe just let it marinate for a while. And it was interesting because the longer she waited, the more likely, in most scenarios, students would answer. And a lot of times they were right then because kids, again, the logical part of their brain is still developing. It's not as fast as the social and emotional part. So you give them that wait time, then they can think, they can process. The silence maybe lets them kind of put their thoughts in order. Should I give advice? I always love this one when I ask people, hey, why'd you want to become a counselor? Oh, because, I'm usually the one people ask for advice and I give really good advice. That's great, but that's not counseling, right? That's when our bias creeps in and all that stuff. So our job is not to give advice. It's to help our clients figure out their own answers. Don't forget that, right? Our job is to help clients find their answers, not to give them our answers. And when are we done? When is counseling over? Um, when you're meeting goals, when you're noticing like, hey, students or the clients kind of starting to advocate for themselves. Now in the school system, it's kind of easy to know when to terminate because they graduate, right? Um, but clinical mental health, like, yeah, you're going to have that termination. And so that's when once you kind of recognize it, you kind of want to prep them. You don't just, that's probably the worst thing you could do is just be like, have a session. Yeah, okay, well, really did a great job today and you've met your goals. So this is our last session. See you later. No, don't do that. Give them a little bit of heads up, right? And the termination session it's a big one because it can have some major impacts if it's not done right. You know what else is done right? Oh, that's a segue. Chapter 5, psychoanalytic counseling. Let's talk about it. No idea why their cheeks are not rosy, but they're brown, and even the teddy bears got them, but they are. So, what is wrong tab, wrong screen? What is psychoanalytical counseling? It's the forerunner to all other types of therapy. It's the foundation for all other theories, modern theories, I should say, excuse me. Right? We got Paul Dubois and of course Sigmund Freud, which means we're going to talk about sex. Oh, so what's the core philosophy in psychoanalytical counseling? Human behavior is driven by inner forces and drives that we often find in our unconscious. It's not usually something that's at the forefront that we realize. Well, why is that? Well, that's because the brain is like an iceberg. We have the conscious, the preconscious, and the unconscious. On the next slide, the iceberg will be bigger, but the conscious is the top 10%. It is the stuff you see above the water. Perceptions we are aware of, things we know why we're acting and we're doing. Preconscious is just below the surface. It's not currently like in the forefront, right? It's stored memories, but we can access it pretty quickly, right? Like I'm thinking about, well, we'll finish. The unconscious, it's the big enchilada. It's a lot of it, right? 85%. It's the vast reservoir of instincts, fears, and traumas that influence behavior without our knowledge. Um, so Another way you could think about it is a computer. Think about your computer right now. Think about the stuff you know you need to access. It's either on your desktop, if it's a file, right where to get it. It's, in your browser, it's a bookmark, it automatically opens, it's group tabs, whatever it may be. That is your preconscious. Your unconscious, that's the stuff you know you have. No, I'm sorry, the conscious. Sorry, it's been a long day. The conscious is the stuff on your desktop, the bookmarks, the stuff boom, there it is. Boom, there it is. Boom, there it is, right? The preconscious, that's the stuff that you know is on your computer, but maybe you forgot where you saved it. Um, Maybe you forgot the file you called it. If you're on a Mac like I am, you have that downloads folder that is just filling up and in the thousands. And you're like, all right, I know I downloaded this photo. I have no idea what I named it. How can I retrieve it? And then the unconscious, right? That's uh that's the stuff that's eating up a lot of your memory on your computer, but you have no idea it's even there. Right? You do a scan and you're like, why do I have this video that's taken up 20 gigabytes from 8 years ago? I like the iceberg better, but I think that's a modern way to kind of think about it. So, activity again, you're gonna do it by yourself. Write down how each of these areas relates to working with children. What might you notice with each part of the mind in a child? So, take a second and think about and what's nice, I think I might have even had AI make this. I can't remember, but Uh, conscious, it says thoughts, perceptions, preconscious, memories, stored knowledge, unconscious, instincts, fears, trauma, violence, and I can't read that last one because my circle's above it. Um, think of examples at each of those. Think about how those might come up. Think about how those might present themselves in a counseling session, right? So take a minute, take 5 minutes, take a look at it, and we will pause. And we're back. How'd it go? Could you see how things kids aren't necessarily thinking about? They know about them, but like, or even some things that they're like, I had no idea how how that could impact your work with them or what they're going through. Kids are very unique and interesting. All right, so we have a student who is having a bad day and feeling anxious in class starts to make jokes to distract everyone, or a child who is frustrated with their parents starts kicking and screaming at their younger sibling. Think about the defense mechanisms that a this kid might be using, right? Um, they might be using denial, right? Refusing to face unpleasant reality, projection, attributing your own unacceptable traits to each other, rationalization, justifying behavior with logical sounding excuses, displacement, redirecting anger from a primary target to a safe substitute like a sibling. Think about that. Think about those times when a kid, maybe not even a kid, just anyone. It's like, hey, I think about those times maybe you have you've brought things home from work, right? You've had a bad day at work and you come home and maybe you yell at your kids or maybe you take it out on the dog or something like that. So we got the id, the ego, the superego. Basic unit of personality contains primal instinct and needs. Ego, executive of the personality. It's that middle ground between the id and the external world. And then superego is like our moral standard. What's good, what's bad, controls the id by imposing ideals of right and wrong. So the student that makes jokes, this could be the id, this could be compensation, right? The student or the kid that kicks their younger sibling. Again, this could be bringing home something. This can be displacement. So take a look at that. It does explain some very, 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 very interesting things. And then here is a great example of showing how they all work together, right? So the id is kind of primal instincts, the pleasure principle, immediate gratification, right? That's the inside of the house. The ego, that's kind of maybe like the attic. That's that middle ground. Has a little bit to do with the superego, a little bit to do with the id. It's not unconscious, it's not conscious. It's kind of right in the middle. And oops, sorry, went the wrong way. And then the superego, I mean, the ego is part of the conscious, but you can see how it's like that middle ground, right? That is kind of the first line of defense. So, if you're looking at a storm, that's the analogy. Got the superego, first protects you from the rain, then the ego, then the id. Mental health depends on the ego's ability to balance these often clashing forces. When they don't, when one kind of different from the other, tells you a different thing to do. And especially imagine a kid doing that, right? So then we got the personality trio. Children are generally dependent on parents to a large extent during the first 2 decades of life. Some people a little bit longer. During this time, the ego develops a superego that continues the parent's influence over the remainder of the person's lifetime. That's a statement. That is a statement. Let's do that again. During this time, the ego develops a superego that continues the parent's influence over the remainder of a person's lifetime. So basically, it's saying when working with children, teenagers, and young adults, parents are always going to be there somewhere, right? Whether they're physically there, whether they're in their lives, like something they have done with their students, something they've done with their children, it's always going to impact them. Think about those friends where, or even family members, maybe their mom is your aunt and they're in their 30s and they are doing things that you are just like your mother, right? Think about that. Think about the kids you're going to work with, how, a piece of their parents are always going to be with them and how that's going to show up. Maybe not always in the best way, maybe in good ways, but maybe not, right? Defense mechanisms, the ego's bodyguard. So, patterns of thought or behavior that protect the ego from anxiety but can distort reality. Short-term relief, right? It's protecting it right then and there, but it's the bodyguard, right? That's what our guy in the bottom right is, wearing a medium shirt. And these are the examples, and we pulled some, for the back of my notes. When we were looking at the example of the kid, right? So we had displacement, redirecting energy from a primary object to a substitute when an instinct is blocked, right? So that's the ego. That is hey, I'm mad at mom, I'm mad at dad, so I'm gonna take it out on my little brother. Denial, refusal to face unpleasant aspects of reality. Rationalization, an attempt to prove one's behavior is justified. Like, hey, maybe I even know I'm wrong, but I'm going to tell you why I'm right. I'm going to talk myself into it. And then projection, attributing one's own acceptable characteristics onto others. I think there's some adults that still do that, right? And it wouldn't be Freud without something with sex. It would have been great if I had Salt and Pepper playing right now. Let's talk about sex, baby. So we got the different stages of Freud's psychosexual development. You could find this in the text, right? You could find it just about anywhere. So, the oral stage, the primary interaction is via the mouth, sucking or rooting reflex, where a sense of trust and comfort is delivered from oral needs being met. So that's a bottle, it's breastfeeding, sucking your thumb, things like that. The anal stage, control of the bladder and bowel movement. This is where we have that conflict of potty training. Any of us that have kids know it's fun. Phallic, discovering the differences between boys and girls, male and female anatomy. Latent, focus, developing social skills, values, relationships. That's to puberty. And from puberty to death, you just focus on your genitals. No. Interest and well-being of other grows during the stage, whereas in previous stage. So basically, the first four stages are kind of about me, my development. What do I need? What's going on with me? And then you get to puberty and you begin to notice other people, you begin to fall in love, and then you start to kind of work in with social norms, navigating life interests, kind of understanding, you start thinking about the well-being of others. How are basic needs being met? Problems in adult develop Problems in adult development are often traced to childhood frustrations, right? Again, trauma informed. Um, example I like to give is the take two balloons, you don't touch one, you blow up the other one. You let the air out of that second balloon, and it still can be blown up like the first balloon, but it's got wrinkles. It's been worn. It's had something happen to it that shapes who it is. So these are like a needs assessment, just making sure kids' needs are being met, and if they're not, like it's really crazy how much in a short amount of time that a kid's been alive, how much different things can impact what they become when they're older. The language of children. So Anna Freud, right, got another Freud, talked about play therapy. Play is considered the equivalent of free association. Our role is to observe the child's behavior, interpret its symbolic meanings, help the child's ego mediate conflicts to reduce symptoms by providing insight into their unconscious motivation. So it's pretty cool watching a kid play or watching a kid do things that how much you can pick up on. I would challenge you, well, we had a partner activity. Tell about a story of fictional character, practices interpreting the story. So yeah, I mean, this would have been fun to do in class. This could be, I would say what you could do with this is turn on a TV show, turn on a cartoon, and see if you could interpret different things that aren't being mentioned. Um, God, I had something good I was going to tell you guys to do. I wish I would have said it 'cause now it's gone instead of this. Play. I think it was going to be. Let me go back. Let me see if this play to heavily mediate, observe the child's association. No, it's gone. I guess maybe one cool thing you could do, obviously, if you could do this, like, if you could find someone to tell you a fictional story and you could kind of, dig through the weeds and ask some open-ended questions to try to interpret it, right? Similar to interpreting play. Um, yeah, I would say, um, think about Think about your adult friends. Think about ones that you have had for years, years and years and years and years and years and years and years, and think about how something they did as a kid maybe is still kind of present to who they are now, right? So think about that. Let's get deep. All right, so strengths and weaknesses of psychoanalysis. It's accepted, right? Because it was kind of, the first wave, or kind of like the first it's like the theory that it's like the thing that modern theories have been built on. Yeah, it's accepted, and because it's so old, there's a lot of research on it. There's a lot of research of its effectiveness, and you know, we're talking about kids. It could be adapted for kids, adults, older adults. It's kind of like that starting point, that safety net. It really could work for anyone. So, what are weaknesses? Um, some cultures may not like the long-term treatment plans. Focus on individualism and self-satisfaction, right? There might be some cultures that value the family environment, the family setting, the cultural environment, the community. Um, some of Freud's theories, like the link between repressed childhood molestation and adult neurosis, lack empirical validation. Again, it's Freud, so it has something to do with sex. So, pros and cons, both sides. Whether you think you'd be able to use it with kids is, that's your call. My student plays by herself during recess instead of playing alone. Why does she play alone? Playing alone is predictable. Group play can be confusing, noisy, or overwhelming, especially if social rules aren't clear. Doesn't always mean they don't want friends, right? Don't always jump to a conclusion that, for lack of better terms, something is quote unquote wrong with them. And they may connect in different ways or need time and support to feel safe joining in. Like, yeah, kids are, it can be nerve-wracking for kids to join a group. I think about, my oldest, when we're with some new people, like eventually she warms up to them, but she is like on my hip, will not leave my side until she she feels comfortable with these new people. So that is psychoanalysis. I don't have a slide for it. I apologize, but or what is due for this week is module 3, the film analysis, and quiz 3. So make sure you get those done. And then next week, we are focusing on, say it with me, 6, 7, chapter 6 and chapter 7. Questions, concerns, complaints, please let me know. Hopefully we got some good insight today of looking at the counseling process and psychoanalytical theory. Yeah, counseling process. It's I would say, look at that general counseling model. That is a really good kind of fail-safe, a good starting point, a good, one of those things to maybe keep on your desk of when you get stuck, of when, you're having a brain fart on your theory. Have that accessible. Remembering, what contributes to a good therapeutic relationship with kids, setting up your office, um, theories that focus on feelings, behavior, or thoughts. That's not the only thing you're working on. Like, it's they're gonna tie together. And then psychoanalytical, thinking about the conscious, the preconscious, and the unconscious. Think about the iceberg, or the example I gave is, the computer. thinking about how there might be some emotions or some things that are deep in the unconscious that aren't quick for the kids to realize or access. So, all right, that is all I got for you. Hour 15, thought that was pretty good. So, please make sure you get those assignments done. Yeah, have a lovely rest of your day. Bye.